Hello everyone and a very warm welcome to this distance learning mode lecture on the introduction to object oriented programming. In this lecture we'll be understanding the basic concepts of object oriented programming, the benefits of this kind of programming as compared to the procedural or the conventional type of programming. And we'll also understand the meaning of different terms associated with the object oriented programming and what are the benefits of those the methods and those terms as compared to the conventional programming. I would like to introduce myself at first. My name is Manish Rathod. I am presently posted at Narmada Control Authority Indore as Deputy Director Civil. Prior to this, I have worked in Central Water Commission Headquarters Design Wing, DNR Wing, for a period of 5 years, and also at Narmada National Water Academy for a period of 5 years as core faculty. Now, without wasting any more time, I would like to start with the topic of the introduction to object-oriented programming. I'm going to share my screen. I hope you are able to see the screen. So, this is a lecture basically on the introduction. So, I will not be going into the coding part. So, the code will not be discussed here because the syntax for every language is different. This is a generic lecture for introduction to object-oriented programming approach. It's basically explaining the approach for object-oriented and the benefits and different terminologies, not the actual syntax, because syntax will vary from language to language. So you will not be seeing much of a code inside this lecture. We will be only talking about the concepts. But once you grab the concept, you will start understanding, as you start coding, you will start understanding the benefits of those concepts when you start programming. So we'll not be discussing the code or syntax or languages in this. We'll be only talking about the concept, the basic concepts of the object-oriented programming approach. In short, it is also called as OOP. So why object-oriented programming was adopted in the first place? It was basically adopted to overcome the shortcomings or limitations of the procedural programming. So earlier we had when the computer programs were evolving, initially the procedural programming was the first approach that was adopted by the computer engineers. And then it was found that procedural programming has a lot of shortcomings and a lot of limitations to imitate the real world problems, and that is why object oriented programming started to evolve. And when the evolution of object oriented programming was on the way, all the limitations that were being faced in the procedural programming were overcome in this OOPs. So first we'll talk a little bit about procedural, because we need to know what are the limitations in these kind of languages. I'm not saying they are bad, but the thing is there are some limitations and the real world cannot be replicated more accurately in procedural programming. So let us discuss a little bit about procedural programming, that what are the shortcomings and so on, then we'll switch to the object oriented programming. So basically procedural programming is a kind of list of instructions. It is written in such a way that it's a list of instructions for the processor. Means you do execute this statement, then you execute this statement, then you execute this group of statements and so on. And if this particular thing is true or false, then you execute this particular set of instructions. Then for example, otherwise you execute these lines of instructions. That is a if-else, typical if-else loop, if-else condition. Then there are loops, like for example, for these many number of times you you repeat these instructions for these many times, or until this particular condition is met, this has to be repeated. These kind of instructions were written which were given to the processor for processing. That's it. So this was the conventional programming, and it was mostly oriented over the functions or algorithms. So there in procedural programming, the main emphasis was on the functions which had well-defined purpose. So one function may have a purpose of combining two strings, or one function may have a purpose of giving out the value of the square of a variable, or maybe any kind of well-defined purpose. If you have a function was written for that, and that function used to return a value as a final result. So the procedural programming was mostly oriented, or I can say focused around the functions. The entire program was divided into functions, also called as subroutines, and then those functions and subroutines were accessed from the main function to do the job. So also some of the functions were grouped. That group of functions is usually called as module. But yes, these modules again are only a group of functions. They are not giving any special protection to data or any special functionality other than plain functions. Then there were some global variables which were available to all functions. So if any variable is supposed to be accessed by different, for example, out of 20 functions, if a particular variable is to be accessed by 2 functions, then it has to be made as global. But the thing is, once it is made global, it will be accessible to all 20 functions. So there was no protection of these variables in procedural programming. And there is, of course, is some local data for individual function which is private, but that local data cannot be accessed by anything, not by the main function nor by the other functions. So this is the typical flow of these are the typical points of a procedural programming, and this is a typical structure of a procedural program. So there is a main program. It starts, for example, in C++, it starts with void main and then brackets, and then so that main program can then access different functions, and those functions can call another functions. You can have a function inside a function and so on. So main program is having access to every function, and all functions have access to each other. Okay. The reverse is not possible. Functions don't have access to the main function, but main program has access to all functions. And then there are some global variables. So those global variables are accessible to each and every function. Of course, these functions can have local data for temporary calculation or so. So, for example, finding the solution of a quadratic equation. So maybe you can have a local variable for determinant. So b square minus 4ac can be stored in a local variable, but that will be accessible only to that function, only for internal calculation purpose of that particular function. And then that function will return some value to the main function. Global data will be accessible to each and every function, and they are global and visible publicly to every function, including the main function. So there were some limitations that were faced by the computer engineers when they were working with the procedural programming languages. The first thing that was faced was was no data protection. So global variables are visible to every function, including main function. So the thing is, if you want the access of that particular variable only to 2 functions out of 20 functions, accidentally it is possible that the remaining 18 functions may cause some changes in the global variable, which is not intended. So accidental change of data is possible. Of course, there is no data protection. That global variable data is not protected, and accidental change of data may happen. And since you need the access of this particular global data only in 2 functions, it's not required to be visible to each and every function. So that was the first limitation, that the data was not protected in this case. And every function has this thing we have already discussed, that every function has complete access to the global variables, and therefore when a new programmer starts working on that code, he can accidentally corrupt the data, because global variable is visible to the remaining 18 functions, as I said. So a new programmer who does not have a complete overall picture, who does not know the complete overall picture of the program, may accidentally corrupt the data, and that may that may have serious repercussion in the final output of the program. And it was difficult to identify that what data is being used by which function, and what data is being modified by which functions, in case of large programs, in case of very big programs that were doing complicated tasks. So if a variable is being changed by a function, you don't know which function changed the variable. So that was very difficult to identify and analyze and debug. And that causes the lack of reusability. For example, for a particular purpose, I have written some code. It is very difficult for me to transfer it to someone else who might use some part of it. So it was difficult to reuse the code, and it was also difficult to maintain. And one more thing, if new data is to be added, then all functions had to be modified. So that was another big challenge, because if, let's say, a program has 150 functions or so, and if a new variable is introduced, a new global variable is introduced, then you have to look into all 150 functions, that where this particular data is required and where it is changed and where it has to be modified and everything. Or even if the data type is changed, then it has to be analyzed, the entire program has to be analyzed. So basically it does not model the real world very well. The real world problems are very difficult to model in this approach, procedural approach. So the scientists and the computer engineers, they switched on to they started evolving the object-oriented programming language, where the entire program is oriented around the objects and classes. So let's see what are the basic concept of it. The basic fundamental idea behind the object-oriented program is to combine data and functions into a unit, that into a single unit, and the functions that are inside that unit, only those functions can operate on that data. That is why the data is now protected, because this data is not visible to other functions. That data is constrained inside the unit. That unit is called as object. That unit is called an object, and these objects can be reused. Okay, so that's why that makes these objects and the program very easy to maintain. So if a new variable is to be added, only a small change in the class is required, and all the entire program will be able to see the new variable at every instance. The data is tied very closely to the functions that operate on the data. Of course, in here also you have some global variables. There can be some global variables, but these global variables are highly not recommended, because again they will induce the procedural programming limitations into your program. So as far as possible, the data and the variables are kept inside the classes, inside the objects, and the functions, whatever the operation you want on those data is operation is carried out by the functions, which is again inside the object. The data of object can be accessed only by the functions of that object, that we have already discussed, and communication of the data is done through functions. So let's say if there is a variable inside a object and you want to change that variable, you cannot change it directly. It has to be changed through a function, and that gives us a full control over the durability of the variable and integrity of the variable, because whenever you want to change that variable, it has to be done through a function, and anything that is not permitted to be changed, there is no function returned to change the variable. That's it. So that is why the data is protected from the outside world, from the outside functions. this is a typical structure of the object oriented program. We have these units, these are objects, and these objects have some data, means the variables or arrays or any data, strings or anything, and then you have functions. These functions can communicate with each other, and this data is protected and hidden from the outside world. So any outside function or outside program wants to communicate with the unit, this unit object, then it will communicate it through the functions, and these function will then access the data and give the output through these functions. These functions are also called as methods, and this data or variables is also called as members. So now since we have talked about the basic concept of object oriented programming, let's talk about few terms which are repeatedly used in object oriented programming. The first one is objects, that we have already talked about. What are the objects, what are the contents, what are the functions of objects. Then we have class. Class is a kind of user defined data type, and object is an instance of class. Okay, so we'll discuss a little bit more about in the coming slides. Then we have something called as encapsulation. Data and functions protected inside a unit, that is encapsulation. Abstraction means taking out the only data which is required and keeping rest everything to the inside the private scope of the function of the object, that is abstraction. Inheritance, taking the properties of a parent class to a child class, that is inheritance. Polymorphism, reusing the same code for different purpose, that is polymorphism. So we'll pick up one term at a time, we'll understand it, and then we'll switch to another term to completely understand the entire architecture of object oriented programming. Objects are the basic runtime entities of an object oriented system, and they represent maybe a person or place or any item that you can imagine that program has to handle. So an object will have some data members and some functions, right? These data members are generally private. They can be made public, but that is not recommended. And you have some functions. That functions will operate on the data members or the variables inside that particular object, and will give some output. For example, if you talk about an object car, then data members can be like the model, the year of manufacturing, the color of the car, and so on. Functions can be start, means start the engine, move, stop, and so on. So this is a typical real life or real world example of an object in a computer program. When a program is executed, the objects, they interact by sending message to one another. That is called as message sending. So whenever a new object is created, at that time we can send some message to it, or when the program is executed in the runtime, during the runtime, one object can communicate to another object by sending messages. So this kind of approach will help in keeping the data protected and also sending the message from one object to another object. For example, if the customer and account are two different objects, okay, there is one object which is called as customer of different data type, and another object which is called as account, which is of another data type. Okay, these two have different classes. Okay, these are two objects inside a program. Then customer object may send a message to the account object which requests for the bank balance. So what that particular account object will do, it will take the variable of the bank balance, send it to the customer. So this kind of message sending is possible, and each object contains data, and then code, means functions to manipulate the data, either to manipulate or read the data. So next is class. Object is an instance of a class. So what is a class? Class is a framework which contains the definition of the object. So for example, you have a class which is a car, okay, called as a car. Then inside that car you can have different models, and all those models can have, for example, this one, the name of this object, the name of this car is Polo, then you have Mini, and then you have Beetle. So you have the name variable inside a car. The value of that name variable will be Polo here, Mini here, and Beetle here. The color of the car can be another variable. Color of the car in this case will be green, in this case it will be blue or cyan, and in this case it will be red. Similarly, you can have functions like get speed, so or get max speed, or get average, or maybe get mileage, average or mileage. So what that will do, that will calculate some values by taking the help of data inside the object and give an output. Okay. So this is a class is basically a framework or a data type, and user can create from that data type, user can create the objects. So object is an instance of a class. Class is a definition, object is a instance of that definition. Classes are user defined data types. Okay, so there are some inbuilt data types, integer and boolean and strings, and maybe you can have long or double long, long double. These kind of internal hard coded data types are there. But there is some data, there is a data type which is called as car, that has the values of variables such as color, name, and speed and everything, and mileage and everything. That is again a user defined data type, and you can create variables out of this data type, and those variables of this data type are called as objects. That is the basic concept. Objects contain code and data which can be made user defined type using classes. Okay, so basically this is the reciprocating of the same thing. I'm making emphasis on the same thing, that class will define the type and object will be instance of that data type. Okay, so basically objects are the variables of the class, and once a class has been defined, we can create any number of objects for that class. So here we have three classes, three objects for one class. You can have as many number of objects as you want. Like if I want, I can have one integer inside my program, I can have 100 integers inside my program. Similarly, I can have one car type inside my model, I can have 100 more car types inside my model. So that is the benefit, that you can start reusing the same class for different objects. So we can create the object of a class using this syntax, the class name and then the object name. And here the class name is class which is already created, and object name is any user defined name. Okay, for example, for a student class, student Ram and Shyam. So student Ram and Shyam, Ram is a object of type student. Similarly, Shyam is an object of type student, and this student will define, this class student will define what are the variables and functions inside it. Variables can be like the name of the student, the roll number, the age, not age, date of birth, and so on. And it can have functions like get age. That will how it will do. It will take the variable date of birth, subtract it from the today's date, and it will give the age. It will give get roll number, get name, and so on. Okay. Here Ram and Shyam are the name of the objects for class student. The student is the name of the class. Ram and Shyam, it is the name of the objects. And we can create any number of objects for a class. All these objects will have all the variables and all the functions which are defined inside the student. Encapsulation is the basic pillar or the basic principle of object oriented programming. Encapsulation means putting everything inside a capsule. So that is a very easy way to remember it. Put all the functions, methods and variables inside a capsule protected from outside world. So in simple word, encapsulation is a process of binding data members, means variables and properties, and member functions inside a single unit. That single unit is called as the class. The class is the unit. So that class will have some methods and some variables which is encapsulated inside a unit, single unit. See this class starting here, ending here, and it has some data members and some methods. That is called as encapsulation in object-oriented programming. Through encapsulation, data is not accessible to the outside world and only to those functions which are wrapped inside the class they can access those variables. Encapsulation solves the problem at the implementation level, and class can specify how accessible each of its members are. Okay, whether variables are public or private, or public they can be private or they can be protected. Properties and methods, they also can be public or private to the outside world. Outside world means another function or another main function. Abstractions in object-oriented programming. Abstraction means taking only the necessary feature from the class without touching or without going into the detail or without going into the internal working or explanation of the program. For example, if I ask you that give me the average of 50 people, there is one way you give me every detail, the average age of you can give me the age of every person, 50 people, and then I will calculate. This is one way. Or what you do, you calculate, take the age from every 50 people, then you sum all these, then divide by 50 and give me final output. So that is abstraction. The data abstraction is a programming technique or design technique that relies on the separation of interface and implementation. So how it is implemented, you don't care. You only talk about the interface. So I am asking, give me the average, you only give me the average, and I don't care about how it is calculated. Okay, it is for example, if you know that when you press the accelerator, the engine will speed up, or when you press the brake, the car will stop. You don't have to care about the internal working. When I press the accelerator, there is a wire which will pull some lever, and that will increase the flow of air, that will increase some petrol which is going into the engine, and that will speed up. And you don't have to worry about that. You just know if I press the pedal, the engine will speed up. If I press the brake, I don't need to care about how the brakes are applied. If I turn the steering wheel, how the gears are working and how the power steering is working, how the torque is being calculated, how motor is running, you don't have to worry about that. I just know that when I turn the wheel should when I turn the steering wheel, the wheel should turn. So that is abstraction. This similar concept is applied in object-oriented programming as well. That makes program very easy to use. So the car driver only needs to have the access to these 5 public functions, like turn on will turn on the engine, turn off will turn off the engine, accelerate, brake or gear change. The driver doesn't have to worry about how the fuel is being pumped from the fuel tank to all the way to the piston, how sparks are created at accurate timings, how the brake pads are being moved, how the piston changing speed is changed. The driver doesn't have to worry about it. Similar thing is happening in computer programs also. So how that particular value is arrived, I don't care. I just need the value of it. That is abstraction. Inheritance. Inheritance is the mechanism of deriving new class from an old class. Okay, it is similar to the inheritance in the real world. The properties and everything are inherited from the parents to the child. Similarly here, whenever you are creating a new class, you can import or inherit or derive the properties or maybe class members or variables and functions, everything which is available inside the parent class. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. A class is already there, let's say it is available on the net in form of a library. You can simply download it and inherit everything of that class inside your program just by calling that class. Okay, just by extending your class from a parent class. So you are creating a class which is inheriting something from another class. So all the properties and objects and methods will be inherited inside your class. Inside your class you can add new variables and you can add new functions. So all the variables and functions of the old class, parent class, will be available inside your class, and you can add additional classes inside your class. Old class is called as, or the parent class, it is called as base class, while the new class, it is called as derived class, or it is also called as subclass or a child class. Inheritance is undoubtedly the most powerful feature of object-oriented programming. Why? Because you don't have to rework most of the things. Let's say there is a problem that I need to solve using my program, and for that problem most of the work has already been done by someone else, and he was generous enough to put that code, the work that he has done, on in form of a library on GitHub. You simply go and search for that particular problem. You will usually find some library kept on GitHub. You clone it, you download it on your PC, you import it inside your project, and then you extend your class to the library class. So all the properties and methods and everything will come into your class. You can then customize your class, add new functions and variables and everything like that. Okay, so that is the most powerful feature, and this is the reason why computer programming programs are evolving so fast, because the object-oriented programming is the basic fundamental behind reusability of the code. So if I have done some work, someone else does not have to do it. So similarly, if I want something to be done, most probably it has already been done by someone else. So with a little bit variation, so I can just download his work from the net and import it inside my project. That is why the reusability comes into picture, and this thing will increase the quality of work because community comes into picture. The code is being uploaded by someone. Community can comment on it, can keep on commenting how to improve it, what are the different features that can be added, that can be deleted, or how the code can be improved, and that improvement is done in real time, and even automatic updates are available. So as soon as the base class, or as soon as the parent class is updated on the net, the class will be automatically downloaded in your program and new features will be available. So this kind of community driven development is the result of object oriented programming, basically inheritance in the object oriented programming. So let's say you have a class which is called as animal, that can have some attributes, some functions, and you want to create 3 different classes, one for dog, one for cat, and one for cow. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You don't need to, you have maybe you have something like 80% work which is already done by someone who has created the animal class. So you can just import it and extend your dog class and cat class and cow class to the animal class. So all the properties like the color of the pet, whether the animal can become a pet or not, these kind of variables will be automatically imported, and you can add something on your own and extend the class as you like. For example, animal class can have a variable or a function that will tell you whether the animal can be a pet or not. So dog, cat and cow, for that it will be true, and for a lion it will be a false. Similarly, number of legs, can be a variable, color can be a variable, number of eyes can be a variable, whether tail is there or not, it can be a variable. Similarly, you can have some functions which are common to all the animals, but you want something, some extra class with some extra variables. You can inherit the animal class inside a dog class and then extend it. Okay, so particular breed of the dog breed variable, it will not be animal class, it will be the dog class which inherits the animal class, but it has an additional variable, the breed of the dog. Okay, this is how inheritance works in object oriented programming. Polymorphism means using the same thing many times for different scenarios. So there is a single interface but multiple implementation. So just I would like to give you an example. For example, you can have a function which is called as addMe. Okay, addMe is the name of the function, and when you pass a string to it, two strings to it, it will concatenate them, and when you pass two integers to them, it will add them. So if I pass string 1 as two strings, one as hello and second one is world, then it will give the output as hello world. But if you pass 5 and 6, it will output as 11. So the interface, the code is same, but when you pass a string to it, it is going to concatenate, and when you pass integers or float, it will add. So same interface, same function name, but implementation is different. So it is the ability of the object to take on many forms. So the same object is doing two different things. Okay, name of the object is same, but it is doing two different kind of things. It basically uses the function overloading. It is called as function overloading. Function overloading means either by changing the number of the arguments, parameters which are passed into the function, or by changing the type of the function, parameters inside the function will behave differently in both the cases, in all different cases. So different results will be produced depending on the number or type of the parameter which is passed. Okay, a function of a class may have the same name but a different number or type of parameters which are passed into the method. Okay, function. Different result may occur depending on the number of parameters or type of parameters which is passed in. Okay, so that is polymorphism. So it's a very simple example, again going back to a car. So if you know how to drive one car, if you know how to use a steering wheel inside a car, you can drive any car, right? So you know when I turn this steering wheel on the right, the car will turn on the right. When I turn it left, the car will turn left. How it is doing, that you don't have to worry. So polymorphism means once you learn how a steering wheel works, the same concept will be applied on every car. Okay, so you can create a property or a method which has more than one realization, which has more than one function, which has more than one implementation, but the interface is same. Okay, so polymorphism is an ability to substitute the class that have common functionality in sense of method and data. And again, it is a very powerful feature because you can have a function that can take the input as strings and booleans and integers and different kinds of, and even some function can have, maybe you can pass one parameter or two parameter or 15 parameters, and for each case it is going to behave differently. That's how polymorphism works. So basically now all the terms that we have used in the object-oriented programming have been covered, and let's talk about the summary, or it is basically the concluding slide of the presentation. It will discuss all the benefits of object-oriented programming. The first one is user-defined data types that can be created. The user-defined data types are called as classes, and the variable of these user-defined data types are called as objects. Code can be reused using inheritance. So by inheritance, you can use the same code again and again. by inheriting the properties and methods of the parent class inside a child class. Data can be hidden by encapsulation. So there is no accidental corruption of data, or there is no accidental change of data or deletion of data by a new programmer who is not conversant with the overall picture of the program, because the data is encapsulated within a unit, within the object. It cannot be corrupted by a new programmer or by someone accidentally. Functions can be overloaded by polymorphism. So same functions inside the objects can be overloaded and can behave differently if you pass different types or different number of arguments inside the function. Some functions or operator can be used for multitasking. So same function you can use by changing the number of arguments that you pass, or by changing the type of the argument. You can use the same function for different types or multitask. The object-oriented system can be easily upgraded from a small system to larger system, and that is the reason why now large code also are becoming easy to create, because what you can do is you can create a class, and using that class itself is very complicated. Okay, that the function that it is doing is very complicated, but that class can simply be imported inside that library can be imported inside your program, and you can simply use the interface which is defined by the class programmer of the class. By using that interface, you can completely interact with the class. The maintenance costs are less, because if some particular function or some variable has to be changed, you don't have to change maybe at 100 places, at 100 instances of the code. It has to be changed only inside the class. Okay, so if for example the method of calculating the average of the car or the mileage of the car is changing, you have to just change the code inside the class. That's it, and it will be applicable to each and every instance, each and every object which is the instance of that car particular class. And it is very simple to implement. It is way more simple to implement once you start understanding the concept of classes and objects and object-oriented programming. Then you will understand that when the programs become large, how easy it is to implement and import and modify the classes as compared to the procedural programming. So it's very simple to understand, but the thing is you must be knowing that these things exist, and the syntax will change from language to language. PHP will have some other syntax, the Java will have some other syntax, or Python will have some other syntax, but the basic concept remains the same. So that's it for now. This was all about the classes and object-oriented programming and objects and all the terms related to object-oriented programming. If you have any questions or doubts, you can always contact me. I have given my contact details here. This was basically a very basic, this lecture was only to give a basic understanding of the object-oriented programming, but there is a lot to learn, because the object-oriented programming itself, understanding the concept is not sufficient. You have to practice it starting with small codes, very small snippet of codes, and then when you start understanding the concept of it, you will start gaining confidence in it, and you will see, you yourself will see that it is very easy to develop codes using object-oriented approach as compared to the procedural approach. Initially, when you start learning the language, programming language, procedural seems easy and object-oriented seems complicated. But when you talk about large codes, a few thousand lines of codes or few 100,000 lines of codes, in that case object-oriented programming makes it very easy to reuse the code and modify and maintain the code. So that's all for now, friends. I hope you learned, you will take something out of the lecture and learn something new. I hope you learned something new from this lecture. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.